I'm Alex and welcome to 52 Miniatures. This video series is me exploring Warhammer Space Marines by building slightly unorthodox dioramas, usually cross-pollinating the Warhammer Space Marine with other ideas and stories. Today I'd like to cross-pollinate the world of future Warhammer with itself. Why are there no female Space Marines? And what would they look like if they did exist? I'll start with getting right into the paint job at hand and then discuss my actions, the motive of this diorama, as I go along. I'm going to do something very simple, take the body of a Space Marine from the Games Workshop Horus Heresy box and put a relatively fitting female head on it. The head is from a Stormcast Preator, a rather lovely miniature I got with the Games Workshop Age of Sigmar Dominion box. I'm then going to paint the Space Marine as an Ultramarine, a specific Space Marine chapter using, quite fitting, paints containing Ultramarine pigment. If you're new to this hobby or as I, new to future Warhammer, we can start with a simple fact. Female Space Marines do not exist. A female Space Marine is as much a fantasy as my previous diorama of a Space Marine in Middle-earth hunting hobbits. I mean, Space Marines are in fact a fantasy upon themselves, but that's beyond the point. Kinda. If you are new to this hobby, or indeed old in this hobby, you might ask, why is this an issue? I'd like to start by saying that I'm not here to be that cat that empties its bowels in the kids' sandbox, that is your Warhammer, and everything I'm saying in this video is based upon this very assumption. Painting a few Space Marines, making a few dioramas, I've been slowly introduced through commentary to the imagined world inside this tabletop game. I've peered at the visuals, seen the miniatures in my feed, watched the cinematic trailers, even read a couple of the books, yet still not fully grasped the original intent of the rather horrific setting that is 40k. I've been told that the game, like many sci-fi stories, is a satirical exaggeration of humanity gone wrong and the havoc that this entails. Yet, to me, this has not been made very apparent. The world in the game is to my eye not quite the same world that is on display to the non-indoctrinated. The grim dark world of Warhammer, the largest miniatures tabletop game setting and the largest Games Workshop franchise. A future fantasy created by game designers in the late 80s reflecting perhaps on the world they themselves lived in to fuel the sarcasm that built this grim dark world. But that sarcasm seems to have been a bit lost on me, and in the light of today, I don't see it very clearly. I mean, I don't think this is dead serious, like some estranged cult wanting us to worship their emperor of little plastic soldiers. That's what my Patreon is for. But I'm missing some of the fun, the one-liners in Austrian English accent of other future super soldiers, or the strikingly sarcastic infographics of something like Fallout. Instead, I see a very large franchise that kind of resembles a propaganda machine on Terra in the 41st millennium, where Space Marines are the heroes of humanity, and not the monstrous, slightly numb-in-the-brain killing machines of the 1980s. Game stores I walk into will have larger-than-life cardboard cutouts of a Space Marine, like old army enlist posters. On the shelves will be row after row of Space Marines, and every year another row of more Space Marines will be added. Space Marines, the most popular miniatures in, and very much the poster boys of, the largest miniature game on Earth. Poster boys. The original in-house plan for the Space Marine was maybe not that it would become the embodiment of Warhammer, but that is what it has become. As a quirk of fate, when the stories of Space Marines were written and defined during a time maybe a little different from today, it was ordained that Space Marines could only be male. Now that's a different kind of irony altogether. When all that male glory is the de facto face of a company combined with the decline of sarcastic intent. From afar, that might look a little uninviting for some. Target audience, sure, but want to make all feel equally invited into this glorious world of Warhammer? Well, why limit ourselves with poster boys and not also start with poster women? And yes, Games Workshop has done some great stuff in that department with Age of Sigmar and my beloved Stormcast Eternals as of late. The head I'm using on this miniature is proof of that, as well as with other factions and miniatures in both future and fantasy. But with the Space Marines, the poster boys' hands are tied by made-up stories of old. Space Marines are a fantasy, made up, toys created for a game. And even though symbolism makes them larger than that, they are deep down stories, words in books. And unlike the words of a master like Tolkien, written in stone under the mountain, the words of Warhammer change, and might as well change again. Rewrite a few words, Games Workshop, change a few stories. Give me, please, some Space Marine poster women. I'd love to walk into a game store and feel that all of the human race has its place as a cardboard cutout in the form of a grimdark, almost human killing machine. All this so far has been, apart from the incontinent cat, a discussion on symbolism. The Space Marine as a symbol of tabletop gaming and the symbolism of a company to have an always all-male as the major symbol. It's pretty powerful stuff. And so what's going to be the setting for my diorama? Well, what is one of the most powerful symbols of male/female relations of the past 1,000 years? Sorry for the slightly littering of this sandbox, too. As it turns out, I'm painting a Space Marine. Her name is Eve. She's been genetically, physically, and mentally altered to become the most efficient and feared weapon in the galaxy. And she sure as is not going to listen to the whispers of some heretic abomination shaped like a snake. Besides, eating an apple would not even occur to her. Fruit is not on the mind of a Space Marine. This is Eve, the poster girl for Games Workshop. Join the Eve0lution. I chose to paint Eve as an Ultramarine, not only because the Ultramarines are before the Eve0lution, the most poster boy Space Marines. Look upon the box and there be Ultramarines. And since there should be no difference between male and female Space Marines, Ultramarines was the perfect choice. Also, the Legion itself whispers to me of a simpler past. Look, we painted this one blue. What kind of blue? Ultramarine. You know, the pigment. Okay, we could build a story on that. How about Ultramar? Sounds good? Ultramarine pigment was once very expensive, created by grinding down a blue semi-precious stone and used only by the most skilled craftsmen. Luckily for me, that has changed, and today all amateurs are welcome to use this lovely blue color. Using the ultramarine paint as I have in a single pigment form brings out a rich and wonderfully deep blue color, contrasted with the gold, and the result is quite striking. I used a lot of different paints and methods, having a lot of fun painting this Space Marine. I admit to having a tendency to grunge things down a bit too much at times. Once I start chipping and scratching, I just can't stop. And I think this mini would have looked rather awesome in not very damaged armor. But there is something about the wear and tear of the Grimdark. The plasma weapon thing was my first. I'm not sure I got away with it, but I wouldn't dare assume what one of them guns looked like mid-blast. I didn't drill a barrel on this one, but that seemed the correct way to go. Regarding the setting, I still stand by my original sandbox statement. This is not meant as an insult. It is actually a rather perfect setting, at least for the Space Marine. She's not quite human anymore, having been altered since her youth, transformed and trained into a killing machine. Faced with human temptation, and her answer is a blast from her weapon. And she doesn't even eat apples. Space Marines eat some kind of super nutrient power porridge bar or something. It's probably not even flavored. Besides, she spits acid, I think. A bit like a snake, come to think on it. There might be unfavorable chemical reactions. Death by apple juice. Warhammer 40k already plays with religious symbolism and setting. The Imperium of Man is quite the secular place. Crusades, Inquisitors, relics, all this stuff. Envisioning the Garden of Eden of the Grimdark as a rugged frontier battleground, a crooked apple tree that might not survive the next shelling, a messenger of chaos in the shape of a snake. I wanted this diorama to be relatively simple. I've begun to realize that I enjoy simple visual settings. Dioramas can easily be cluttered. I try to use the bare minimum to tell my story and persuade the viewer. On one side, some type of fortification, a trench set in the future but that has stood for ages, a war that rages for ages, never ending. On the other side, a desolate wasteland, well apart from the apple tree. Everything is rather lifeless. We are in the grim dark future, remember, and here there is only war. I tried to paint everything rather monochrome and similar with subtle color differences. The apples, the snake, the rust, all slightly different shades of orange with cooler violet shadows. The ground, brown-gray, same as the tree, yet subtly different. The leaves, playing with the same tints as the gold on the marine armor. This all ties everything together and adds to the feeling of a drab world. More saturated elements, more details, and a lot of the symbolism could have been lost. The combination of sparse furnishing and a limited color scheme also makes the Space Marine stand out very well. I'm quite proud of her. Eve, my Space Marine. I can see why people go for the Ultramarines. It's a good color. That deep blue is a bit hypnotic. I must pass my thank you to my friend Carl, who had some spare Ultramarine transfers he kindly gifted to me for this project. I'm also proud of my apples. I'm not much of a sculptor, and this is the first time I tried to sculpt something not resembling the unidentifiable. I made apples, and I'm happy. This video is what goes on in my head, my thoughts. I'm not accusing or going for sensationalism, rather ventilating ideas that hopefully lead to meaningful discussions. I also try to put my thoughts into little creations. It feels like a creative way of going about these things. I'd like to hear what you think of this diorama. What do you see in it? I've linked some videos in the description that might be fun to watch for those of you intent on hearing more about Space Marines and female Space Marines. Thank you to my patrons for all the wonderful support. And finally, come join the Eve0lution. Bye. Thank you.